Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Throne of Steel episode number 187 based on novel. So let's start. However, not all members became weakened in this world. In the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group, there was one person who was best suited to combat in such an environment. Her strength would multiply many times, and that person was Kia. The purifying power of Kia was the absolute nemesis for the undead. Moreover, she only had to cleanse a powerful undead creature, and the cleansed fire of the undead creature's soul would be transformed into a purifying power for her to use. This was how Electrolux transferred its power to Kia, which allowed Kia and Long Hao-chen to be the first to break through the 9th level bottleneck and quickly gained their own domain. Even during the cleansing process, the Sickle of Death also helped her evolve. Long Hao-chen had already made targets and battle plans before they came here. The solution was simple: procrastination. Because their goal was only to block the enemy and to buy enough time for Hao Yue not to fight these undead creatures. Therefore, although the two sides launched violent collisions at first, the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group still slightly reserved their power, especially Kia and Long Hao-chen. If Kia's power of purification were to be exposed too soon, it would have attracted the attention of the sovereign kings, who had the power to control this world and who had the strength to command their full explosion. By using her power at the right time would be more beneficial to Hao Yue's evolution. But now, when the sovereign kings finally gave in and Chen Yinga was repulsed, Kia broke out. With the Tower of Eternity and her domain of purification along with the 7 God of Deaths, she purged the King of Shadow before he could react. Then she released a White Lotus and absorbed the purifying power from the fire of the Bone Dragon's souls in a short time. She instantly gained the upper hand in this battlefield, and not only that the gap was closed, but also the 10 sovereign kings became 9 and the army of Bone Dragons got nearly annihilated. From weak to strong, Kia's rose to prominence had stunned all sovereign kings, and none wanted to be purged next. And the army of undead creatures below also began to attack the mountains where Hao Yue was at this time. Water, fire, earth, wind, light, and darkness represented the 6 properties of light in different directions at the same time. Among the 12 sacred saints, 6 of them expert in melee and another 6 experts in magic. Their abilities were very balanced, and their souls strongly endowed with their own super fighting ability. The members of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group were no match for them in terms of combat experiences and skills. Therefore, they did not need to take command at all, and they were always ready to fight as soon as the army of undead creatures began to attack. 6 spells, 6 incantations, and 6 simultaneous blasts from 6 directions. The large army of undead creatures instantly fell like wheat being reaped. The lower-ranked undead creatures were directly destroyed while the higher-ranked undead creatures went into full defense. However, a great deal of dark magic, curses, and undead magic also began to bombard the mountain frantically. There were too many undead creatures. One could say that all the higher-ranked undead creatures in this world gathered here. The curse of the 12 sacred saints could only disrupt their attacks, but it couldn't stop them completely, especially the first-leveled undead creatures that had strong immunity to magic. Kia snorted and raised her left hand to release the Tower of Eternity once again while she floated down. The Tower of Eternity zoomed in and covered the whole mountain. Under the magical bombardment of a large number of high-ranking undead creatures, the Tower of Eternity burst into circles of colorful glow. There was a lot of wind and rain. Kia fluttered off with her toes resting on the spire of the Tower of Eternity. She was holding her Sickle of Death high up, and the power of purification poured into the Tower of Eternity. A strange hum broke out from the Tower of Eternity, but it was so faint that many of the members of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group could not hear it. But to the undead creatures, it was like a giant hammer thundered down on their chests. Layers of white light spread out from Tower of Eternity, which amplified Kia's domain. The Tower of Eternity had strong spiritual characteristics, coupled with the release of the purification force. The two complemented each other and immediately made the white glow expand its span. The undead creatures' magic and purgatory forces were crossed, and the scattered magic would not be able to break the defense of the Tower of Eternity for a while. All undead creatures in the domain of purification, regardless of its rank, immediately entered a state of rigidity, and the fire of their souls began to suffer in the domain of purification. The lower-ranking undead creatures couldn't resist for half an hour and would be cleansed in an instant. While the higher-ranking undead creatures were desperately trying to escape the power of the domain of purification. The number of undead creatures was so big, in addition to those who could fly, how could the undead creatures on the ground rush out? Then, there came a scene that made all the sovereign kings extremely shocked. Their mighty army of undead creatures fell from inside out like a wheat harvest. The body remained the same, but their souls had been cleansed. After their souls were purified, the power of their souls returned to the Tower of Eternity, which then was transferred to Kia. There were so many undead creatures, and the purifying power from them was so great that Kia could only absorb a small part of it, and the rest was released again through the Tower of Eternity, which made the domain of purification to expand more. Let alone ordinary undead creatures, even the sovereign kings also began to be swept away by the domain of purification. They panicked and retreated as far away as they could. The army of undead creatures began to crumble, and there was a great deal of confusion. Seeing what happened to the army of undead creatures in front, other undead creatures began to retreat. Countless lower-ranked undead creatures became a stepping stone for the higher-ranked undead creatures. The domain of purification continued to expand outward at a steady rate. The scariest thing about the domain of purification at this time was that its expansion was almost infinite. There were so many undead creatures here that the power of purification became enormous. While it was not possible to fully control these purification forces through the Tower of Eternity, it was possible to spread them out. The power of purification grew stronger and stronger, and it was not only the undead creatures that were being cleansed, but also the black rocks and the intense lava fire on the ground. It showed a brown earth. The earth flattened out. Kia, at this time, was more like the ruler of the world than the Knight of Judgment. The domain of purification, in the process of sublimation, had covered an area of nearly 10,000 meters in diameter. All undead creatures in the domain were covered by the domain for a period of time, then a white light rose from the top of their heads before they melted into the domain of purification. The difference between the strong and the weak was only the length of duration within the domain of purification. With the support of the domain of purification, the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group all made counterattacks. The Sovereign King's power greatly decreased due to the power of the domain of purification, and they must protect their own fire of souls from this domain. Therefore, their only choice was to retreat and escape to a further place. The members of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group pursued the retreating enemies to leave a few marks on the Sovereign King's bodies. Boom! The Knight of Judgment went all out with a sword to shake Long Hao Chen. Seeing the whiteness of the domain around him, he looked up to the sky and screamed, "No! No!" The army of undead creatures was completely driven back by the domain of purification, and the domain of terror was no longer able to use even its domain sealing ability. After sublimation, the domain of purification became too strong. The Knight of Judgment held up his Yue with both hands and chopped out a sword fiercely in the direction of Kia. The icy blue light flew straight to Kia with a roar. However, when the sword light had advanced forward only 100 meters, it was blocked in the middle of the air by a turquoise figure. It was the Sword of Eternity's All Things Resuscitation. The same move, yet again blocked the Knight of Judgment's attack. The gap between both sides' practice levels was huge. Long Hao Chen couldn't touch the Knight of Judgment. But again, the Knight of Judgment also couldn't get rid of Long Hao Chen. With the support from the Armor of Eternity, Long Hao Chen's speed was not any less than that of the Knight of Judgment. Although Long Hao Chen only used a sword, he was able to repel the Knight of Judgment repeatedly. The Knight of Judgment began to feel despair, and the domain of purification also began to burn his spirit. Although in a short period of time, this domain could do nothing serious to him, it at least prevented him from absorbing any dark forces to replenish himself and cut off his ties with his subordinates. It's all over. Even without Austin and Griffin, or even the presence of these humans, it's not for us, the Sovereign Kings, to fight. Is the domain of purification going to expand endlessly? If that's true, then, will this world be purified? If so, it is only a matter of time before even I, myself, will be cleansed. When the Knight of Judgment began to despair in the domain of purification, Long Hao Chen did not attack him, but turned back and landed beside Kia. The green balls of light that surrounded him fell quietly behind Kia, and pure vitality slowly poured into Kia's body. At the same time, the white ball of light around him was also slowly suspended in his chest, and the thick white light was injected into the precious stone, which was a huge force of chaos. Just for a moment, a delicate sense of fragmentation appeared around the space of Long Hao Chen's body. And then there was a "keng" sound behind his purple symbol broke into pieces and scattered in the air. In battle, Long Hao Chen couldn't unlock the Knight of Judgment's seal, but in the non-combat state, it was too difficult to limit Long Hao Chen when he was wearing the Armor of Eternity. And now the Knight of Judgment used his energy the most against the domain of purification. How could he also fight Long Hao Chen? The expansion of the domain of purification suddenly stopped. The white glow no longer released into the distance, but rose slowly into the air. Even though the power of purification was killing the undead creatures, the air became cleaner than ever, clearing away the world's filth in a big way, wherever the power of purification expanded to. Against the undead creatures, they didn't have too much psychological burden, let alone these undead creatures that tried to attack Hao Yue at all costs. But Kia's attacks were stopped by him, not for the undead creatures, but for Kia herself. Through the link of the soul chain, Long Haochen felt that Kia was in an unstable state, so he came to her side as soon as possible. The level of the domain of eternity was the highest in this world and in the Holy Land. Kia did not have half of the exclusion than that of Long Haochen. Therefore, when the two domains integrated, the power of Long Haochen's sealed divine throne of eternity and creation quickly took control of the situation. The first thing to do was to stop the expansion of the domain of purification and to stop those purifying forces from expanding outwards to cleanse the undead creatures. Only by this way would no more purifying power be added. With Long Haochen's help, Kia quickly calmed down. Light circulated inside her beautiful eyes as she saw Long Haochen again. Long Haochen slightly nodded to her reproachfully, which indicated that she should continue to maintain this state. Danger was also an opportunity, and such a situation was absolutely unattainable. One more of that vast power of purification would give Kia a boost. Ascension was much, much faster than self-cultivation. Long Haochen knew Kia was in a crisis, but the sovereign kings did not know. The Night of Judgment saw the domain of purification stopped expanding under the control of Long Haochen. The fire of soul in his eyes appeared some subtle changes. At this time, the voice of Long Haochen echoed in the vast world of the undead. I have no intention of fighting you. We don't want to kill them all, but if you continue to attack, don't blame our ruthless hands. If you wish, we will wipe all of you out completely. Long Haochen's voice was not loud and did not have any emotions, but it was so clear to all the sovereign kings. At this time, the domain of purification terrified them, and the pure white light emitted a layer of supreme pale gold. The high-ranked undead creatures, which had been covered by the domain of purification, almost immediately extinguished the fire of their souls after the appearance of this pale gold. The areas of convergence were far more powerful than before. Even the 9 remaining sovereign kings recoiled at the light of eternity and dared not step forward, let alone ordinary undead creatures. There was no longer a gap, only pure restraint. The Witch King said with a shrill voice, "What if Austin and Griffin wake up and are willing to spare all of us?" Long Haochen said coldly, "Though I don't know what Hao Yue did to you in his previous life. All I know is that it has been targeted by you ever since it was born. If it was not lucky enough, it would have died at your hands." The Witch King's voice grew a little louder. "That's because you don't know what it had been doing, and you don't know how horrible it's been when it's awakened." Long Haochen smiled coldly and said, "I only know that it is my partner, my friend. As you may see, if you continue to attack us, you have no chance of winning but only to be killed by us. It would be better for Hao Yue to deal with you when it awakens than to die right now. You can judge for yourselves which is better." The Night of Judgment said with a strange husky voice, "Austin and Griffin are your friends. Aren't you afraid of its awakening? You're not weak, but you're nothing compared to Austin and Griffin when they wake up." Long Haochen replied coldly, "That's my problem. But I can tell you that the reason why Hao Yue returned to this world is because it wants to evolve. I will carry it with me for many more days to come and let it accompany me in my world. If, as you say, this is its last evolution, then it may never return to this world again." The Night of Judgment said in disbelief, "You mean it won't ever come back again?" Long Haochen replied, "I can't promise it won't ever come back again. But I can tell you that if you leave here now and you are no longer against Hao Yue, it also won't be against you in the future." Kia had gradually entered a state of enlightenment, and with her previous loss of control, she had lost the ability to fight in addition to maintain her domain. Although Long Haochen still had the hidden card, he was not willing to fight with these undead creatures. He could not bear the loss of even one member of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group. "How is that possible? Who are you to make any promises for Austin and Griffin?" said the Witch King suspiciously. The mask on Long Haochen's face rose slowly, and the 9 jewels in his crown shone magnificently. He looked just like a sovereign king. "Here's my promise." He pointed to his forehead. Then, under the control of his mind, 9 lines of purple and gold light gradually emerged. A faint purple also appeared in the sky, connecting to him and Hao Yue. "What's this?" The Night of Judgment was shocked, and the other sovereign kings also became silent. Even the Bone Dragon King quickly removed his armor and moved to the Night of Judgment's side. In the fire of their souls, the same emotions rose. Blood. Blood pact? How is that possible? Austin and Griffin have a blood bond with a human? The Witch King became a little stuttering from shock. All the other sovereign kings were as shocked as the Witch King. For a moment, the black and red world became silent. Long Haochen asked with a deep voice, "Am I qualified now?" The Knight of Judgment did not answer Long Haochen directly. He quickly gathered with other sovereign kings to discuss something as a vast grey seemed to envelop their bodies. Long Haochen was not in a hurry. For him, to delay time was the best choice, whether it be Hao Yue's evolution or Kia's recovering needed time. The other members of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group also sensed the situation's turnaround. All, except for Yang Wenjiao, Duan Yi, and the 12 Sacred Saints, gathered around Long Haochen. Sai Maxian, under Han Yu's Divine Light Furnace, had recovered about 70 to 80%. Although Chen Yinga and Wang Yuanyuan's states were worse, they could still fight. Bathed in the light of eternity, they were not constrained by this world and the previous consumption was slowly recovering. Almost an hour had passed before the grey light that covered the sovereign kings faded away. The Knight of Judgment faced Long Haochen again before the previous strength had completely disappeared. Respectful human king. You have demonstrated your ability and sincerity with the deed of blood. Since you are in a position to make promises for Austin and Griffin, we have decided to take your word for it. And I hope you keep your promise to restrain Austin and Griffin. The Knight of Judgment changed the way he called Long Haochen, which showed his compromise and recognition for Long Haochen's strength. Long Haochen nodded without expression and said, "I won't repeat what I said again." Although the Knight of Judgment did get the answer he wanted from Long Haochen, he did not ask Long Haochen any further. He looked at Hao Yue in the distance with fear as he led the group of the Sovereign Kings and their army of undead creatures to recede slowly. Looking at the Sovereign Kings gradually disappearing, Long Haochen also sighed. Layers of shimmering white light diffused from his limbs, and eventually faded into a shimmering white light that surged toward the huge gems on his breastplate. When all the light converged, the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation disappeared, along with the gems on his breastplate. Long Haochen's body slightly shook, it was unusually pale, and he needed Han Yu's support to stand up straight. His weakness was not due to the excessive use of his spiritual energy, but from his own soul. The sealed divine throne of eternity and creation gave him a sense of infinite power. But the mental energy required to control this terrifying force was also terrifying. Despite his full integration with the throne, Long Haochen nearly exhausted his spirit in the previous battle. It was normal that his soul became weak. That was one of the main reasons he didn't want to continue the fight. If he continued to fight, he would have exhausted his soul energy too much. After a short breath, Long Haochen had stabilized his state and said to his comrades, "Han Yu, Brother Zhong, please keep a look around." The others found outside the domain of purification. "We will wait for Hao Yue to evolve." Roger. They moved quickly to occupy a good spot. With Kia's domain of purification, it was impossible for any undead creatures to stealth inside the domain undetected. Long Haochen stayed by Kia's side, he closed his eyes to keep his spirits up. Then he was surprised to find that the holy unicorn necklace on his chest began to emit gentle spiritual waves that connected with his spirit. The strength of the holy unicorn could not directly help him recover his spirit, but it could relieve his mental fatigue. In this way, the spirit of Long Haochen would recover faster, just like in his normal practice. As Kia continuously absorbed the power of purification, it became thinner and thinner while her aura became stronger and stronger. The tower of eternity beneath her became as white as the power of purification. The army of undead creatures had indeed retreated with no sign of returning. Long Haochen could guess the Knight of Judgment and other sovereign kings' thoughts. Their thoughts were simple: if they were to keep fighting, then they would have no chance of winning. Nor could they stop Austin and Griffin's awakening. The most they could do was to give Long Hao's teammate some loss so that death will be avenged. Would Austin and Griffin spare them once they wake up? Long Haochen proved their close relationship with his blood deed, so the Knight of Judgment took the bet to trust Long Haochen that he would keep his promise and no longer stand against them. By weighing the pros and cons, the sovereign kings had no other choice. It was impossible to tell time in this world of black and red. Kia's meditation was ascending, Hao Yue's awakening continued, and the others remained vigilant and waited. In the other world, too, a great battle unfolded. The 9-color magic light burst. A dazzling figure fell far away and hit nearly 1,000 square meters of the woods. This dazzling figure was a special creature. A beautiful one with its body green with a little blue. Its head was similar to the dragon clan, about 15 meters in height and a long tail with a circle of dark purple lines. The most beautiful part was its wings. The color of the upper part of the wings was aquamarine, same as the body. It gradually turned pink as it extended down and finally became a ruby color. The wings were particularly wide, extending from the back and also gradually turning into purple color. The edge of the wings had a slender angle and the front of the wings were the longest angle. The whole wings were covered with golden lines, including the shape of the moon. Its eyes were also turquoise, but at that moment, they were full of anger, and its powerful natural aura was fading. There was also a blackened scar on the lower right abdomen. A cold, clear voice echoed in the air. "It's no use. You can't stop me. Your practice is not weak. But there's still a gap between us. Besides, you're just an elf dragon." In the distance, a figure quietly suspended in the air. A cascade of black hair floated behind like a black wheel. Pale skin and blue eyes that reflected the stars of the universe. There was even a faint smile. Was that the god of devils, Feng Xiu? This was the human world, very close to the Jinnenguan, where the priest temple was located. However, the temple did not receive any news. Not just human, even if it was high-ranked devils, even that moon devil god or the star devil god wouldn't know if the god of devils came here, who should have stayed in the devil's imperial palace, being isolated from the outside world. The elf dragon slowly climbed up, spreading its wings to fly into the air again. Its body was a little unstable. It looked at Feng Xiu and said, "God of devils, you have to pass over my body first if you want to enter the dream shrine. Maybe you can beat me. But in the absence of the devil pillar, it's possible that you will also die along with me." The god of devils shook his head gently and said, "No, you are wrong. How can I come without absolute certainty? Although in order to cover up the story and also in order not to let those disgusting humans discover me, I did not bring the devil pillar along. But I still have the power to kill you." As he spoke, his right hand slowly pointed out in front of him, and then a strange streak of black appeared. It looked very faint, but the moment it appeared, all the light around it seemed to be absorbed to it, and the light turned to darkness. The elf dragon roared as 9 colors light burst out from its body. The strong spirit power waves diffused, and the spiritual force was not any weaker than that of the god of devils. However, the next moment, all the light suddenly disappeared. From the distance, the elf dragon looked like a lantern, but now it suddenly extinguished. The light gradually restored, the god of devils stood still while the elf dragon was still suspended in the air. At this time, Feng Xiu's face became even paler and his body that suspended in the air became a bit shaky. Had the god of devils fallen into weakness? On the other side, there was a small black spot on the elf dragon's chest. This black spot was spreading out like a plague. Although the rate of spreading was not fast, the elf dragon's huge vitality was slowly fading. Feng Xiu coughed twice. He couldn't continue to hover in the air and fell on the ground. But there was still a faint smile on his handsome face. "Your total spiritual strength is somewhere between 97 and 9880,000. But my spiritual power had successfully reached over 1,000,000. I do not belong to this world. One cannot become God just by a spiritual breakthrough. However, I have to suffer from my spiritual power every day. This is divine punishment. So, I need just one God position to settle this problem once and for all. With the gods in the body, I can cross through space, through the world, and not be restricted by the rules of the world. No longer bothered by life length. You should feel honored to die under my attack of the Faded One. You are the first. And, of course, probably the last. I am afraid there is no other in this holy land worthy of my offer." The elf dragon glazed over at Feng Xiu as the black spot had spread almost all over its body. The core of that black spot began to flutter a little light and its body was collapsing. "The Faded One, you have already achieved this step. You've been able to hold out in the sealed divine throne. You should be the strongest of all. I'm sorry, Your Highness Goddess of Nature. I did my best. I can no longer protect your dream shrine." As it spoke, the speed of black spot spreading increased rapidly, and the elf dragon slowly dissipated into innumerable points of light in the air. As it disappeared, everything around it seemed to dim down. The aura of nature was also fading rapidly. Feng Xiu sat cross-legged on the ground, as if there was no perception of what had just happened. His face was white, but he looked very calm. Circles of black light began to appear around his body. In a few moments, the invisible pressure had spread from him again. And all the surrounding plants began to wither rapidly, which was a sign of vitality being deprived. Poof, poof, poof. 3 groups of white light spurted out in the sky and gradually condensed into the shape of pure white lotus. Kia sighed and then slowly opened her eyes. She was very surprised. Level 9, rank 4. By virtue of the purification of the undead creatures in the domain of purification and the enlightenment that followed, she broke through the barrier one after another, and advanced to level 9 rank 4. Her practice level was even more than Long Hao now. The Tower of Eternity also changed to a brilliant white with her evolution, which finally became one with her. It was completely separated from the previous god of devils, Electrolux. Congratulations, Kia. Long Hao looked at his lover with a bright smile on his face. From the beginning of the Enlightenment to the present, according to the calculations of Long Hao, about 10 days had already passed in the human world. In these past 10 days, not only Kia had improved dramatically, the rest of the group also gained a wealth of combat experience combined with their own new equipment and their own understanding after the war with the sovereign kings and undead creatures. They made a lot of progress. The previous war was dangerous, but it was also a testing ground for the rising power of the group. Kia smiled and said, "My spiritual power should be almost as good as yours and my domain may be a little higher than yours." After Long Hao fused with the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation, he maintained the status of the highest rank with level 9 of rank 3, the bottleneck of rank 3. With the heart of eternity, his spiritual power was actually more than 400,000. Kia had broken through to rank 4, but the amount of psychic power was still similar to that of Long Hao. Long Hao smiled and said, "Then from now on you will be the one to protect me." Kia took him by the hand and chuckled. "No," she said. "You're supposed to protect me at all times. Pity that you are born as a man. By the way, what about the evolution of Hao Yue?" It was a pleasant surprise for her reaching a new level. The Tower of Eternity had also absorbed some of the purifying power and had increased in nature to benefit her overall ascension. Long Hao said, "The evolution of Hao Yue is almost complete. Take a look." Kia looked in the direction where Long Hao pointed and Hao Yue was no longer quiet. Its body had grown so much that it was even bigger than a dragon. He was already more than 40 meters long, and each neck had grown thicker. The purple scales gave off a strong sheen. A faint of terrifying smell loomed. The 12 sacred saints were afraid to stay close to him. The 2 giant bulges on the outermost edge continued to tremble, and the tips began to ooze with lavender liquid. Apparently, there were also 2 heads. When they grow out, the evolution of Hao Yue would be complete. Long Hao said, "Hao Yue in the process of evolution seems to have been absorbing a special force in this world. The connection between us cannot tell me clearly what that force is. But I'm sure it's not some dirty dark element or the fire element of this world. It should be a different kind of power. As if it was its own power." Kia raised her eyebrows a little and said, "Hao. Both the god of devils and the undead creatures here want to fight against Hao Yue. It seems that Hao Yue after full growth will have a great threat to them. If Hao Yue is really that strong, will it?" Long Hao sighed before he hugged her slender waist and said, "Hao Yue is my good brother. All I can do is to trust him. Should he be abandoned because of doubts about its future power? I can't possibly do that. So, I had no choice. And I also believe that in a previous life, Hao Yue may be what they call Austin and Griffin. But in this life, it is just my good brother Hao Yue. The deed of blood brought not only the connection between us, but also the fact that I had changed its nature. In addition to its own noble and powerful blood. A part of it is my blood." Kia nodded gently. "Okay. Whatever you decide, we will support you unconditionally." Although until now Long Hao did not know the true origin of Hao Yue, he did not want to investigate further. No matter what background Hao Yue came from, how powerful it was before, how destructive it was still his brother. Could he be so afraid of the future power of Hao Yue and be against him? "Almost done," said Long Hao suddenly. At the same time, 9 lines of purple and gold on his forehead appeared in an instant. The intense purple and golden glow illuminated even a few dozen square meters of the surrounding area. Kia, too, was startled. The same terrifying aura as Hao Yue suddenly emerged in Long Hao, which even thrilled her domain of purification. The next moment, a flash of purple light flashed across and Long Hao instantly went to Hao Yue's body. The purple and golden light began to spread from his forehead, and in an instant, it spread all over. His whole body became the same color. The sudden change also woke up the rest of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group. When they came to their senses, they dispersed quickly. At the same time, they looked around them more carefully. Hao Yue's evolution had come to a critical moment and Long Hao seemed to be affected by it. This was obviously the most dangerous time. However, Kia's timely awakening became the backbone of Light Dawn Demon Hunter group as her powerful purifying power was enough of a deterrent. Kia pointed her sickle of death in her right hand in the air and 3 white lotuses, which had been condensed, flew out. The 3 white lotuses flew toward 3 different directions, which overlooked Hao Yue at the center from above in the distance. Wasn't that the flourishing lotuses? If there was an attack from the undead creatures, regardless of the direction, the lotus would explode. The members of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group all knew the tactic well. Those experts in close combat stayed outside and the sorcerer stayed inside. Without hesitation, Chen Yinga released the Door of Creatures once again. Chen Yinga learned many lessons from her battle with the Witch King and now she made great progress with her summoning. This time, only one Door of Creatures opened, and a very special creature came out. It was a white horse with a crystal-clear white body. Apart from its color and its brilliant white, it looked like any other horse. But it was not long before everyone saw how powerful it was. The horse moved around in a flash like white lightning. It unexpectedly went to the flourishing lotus and gently touched the flourishing lotus with its head. It was a strange scene. The white light from the flourishing lotus did not repel at all. Then a white glow suddenly appeared from the feet of the horse. As far as the rings went, the soft white diffused. It was the same purifying power as Kia. This is a beast of purification. The legendary horse of death. Chen Yinga smiled as she pointed her finger towards Kia. The beast of purification then looked at Kia and felt a close connection immediately. It went straight to Kia with an amazing speed and rubbed its head against Kia. Kia was overjoyed when she felt a thick purification aura from its body. With the support from the beast of purification, her purifying power greatly increased. It was much easier for her to fight undead creatures in this world. They were here to protect the Hao Yue's evolution carefully. The evolution of Hao Yue also reached the most critical moment. A layer of purple emitted from the body of Hao Yue constantly. Above the convergence of its huge body, Long Haochen was at the center of these purple colors. This purple color was the thought of destruction, but because of the blood bond, Long Haochen's body and his original strength did not conflict. The power of destruction was greater than his power of God of Light. As these destructive thoughts poured madly into his body, the bottleneck of Long Haochen's level 9 of rank 3 crashed. The inner power was increasing rapidly. It consisted of the power of the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation as well as the power from Hao Yue. The scales on Hao Yue's body began to divide gradually. The scales that were previously large gradually split into pieces of small scales as its body grew larger, which grew to the same size as 2 palms. Then the upper edges became 9 crisscrossed lines and the refracted purple light turned into a magical color. The magical color continuously changed its colors. The purple color from Hao Yue's scales was elusive as it was different from each angle with different depth, which made it look so mysterious yet so colorful. When this magical purple color turned the darkest, it seemed as if Hao Yue had disappeared from this black and red world. The 2 great bulges trembled even more, and more purple liquid oozed out, so much that even the broken lines could be seen. Hao Yue's aura shot up like a blowout. It broke through level 9 in an instant and still continued to rise. In the blink of an eye, it was more than the level of Long Haochen. At last, at the leftmost bump, there was a loud and a large head came out and roared up into the air. The elusive purple scales were put in glory immediately and the aura of Hao Yue flourished to break out again. And then there was another big head that broke through at the right side. Immediately, a strong aura sublimated again. This video will end here.